The courtroom was a cold, echoing box of polished wood, stiff collars, and silent judgments. At the center of it all, a boy stood, too young, too small, and far too alone to belong. The gallery was half full, murmurs like restless ghosts floating through the air as the afternoon hearing began. No one noticed him at first, just another observer in a sea of grown men in suits. But when he moved forward and took a place behind the defendant's table, the room tensed as if someone had smuggled a child onto the battlefield. He looked about 16. Thin-framed, pale-faced, with a mop of unruly brown hair and eyes too tired for someone that age. His hoodie was wrinkled, jeans creased, and his sneakers were the sort that had seen too many sidewalks. In one hand he carried a satchel bulging with documents. In the other, a yellow legal pad filled with scribbled notes. There was no briefcase, no tie, no badge of status or respect. Just determination and an unreadable expression stretched across a teenage face. Judge Raymond Halverson adjusted his glasses, peering down from the bench with a mixture of curiosity and annoyance. He was the kind of man who believed a courtroom was a sacred place, not a playground for idealists or stuntmen. Everything about this boy grated against that belief. The judge tapped his gavel once. Court is now in session. First on the docket, State of California versus Calvin Brooks. From the holding cell door, a man in his 40s shuffled forward in cuffs and an orange jumpsuit. His eyes were sunken, his hands trembling. He gave the boy a fleeting glance, half shame, half hope, then the judge's gaze landed squarely on the boy at the table. "I assume you're here as a witness?" Halverson asked. The boy stood. "No, Your Honor, I'm representing the defendant." The silence in the room was instant. Sharp got, there was a pause, a beat where time itself seemed to inhale. Halverson squinted. "Come again?" The boy straightened. His back, his voice steady despite the judgment pressing down from every corner. "I'm Alex Monroe. I'm Mr. Brooks's legal counsel." A cough came from the back. Then a chuckle. Laughter, barely stifled, spread among the attorneys seated behind the prosecutor's table. "Are we filming a reality show I wasn't told about?" one of them whispered. Halverson's jaw tensed. "Son, if this is some kind of prank, it's not," Alex replied. "I passed the California bar examination on my first attempt. You'll find my certificate filed with the state registry as of last month. I submitted my appearance documents to the clerk's office earlier today." The judge turned toward the bailiff, who had already walked briskly to a side table to check. Within moments, a thin folder was passed up to the bench. Halverson opened it, his brow furrowing as he scanned the documents. Bar license number, identification, filing signature. All authentic. He blinked twice, looking again at the kid who dared to call himself counsel. "Well, I'll be damned," Halverson muttered under his breath. He cleared his throat and leaned forward. "You're telling me you're licensed to practice law ... at 16? 15, actually. I turned 16 last week." The gasps this time were not hidden. The room, once doubting, now leaned in with fascinated horror. The prosecutor, a sleek-haired man in a $3,000 suit named Grant Lansing, spoke up. "Your Honor, this is highly irregular. The court has a right to ensure competent representation. This isn't a spelling bee, this is a criminal trial." Alex didn't flinch. "Competency is measured by ability, not age. If opposing counsel wishes to file a motion to challenge my representation, I'll be happy to respond," Lansing scoffed. "Oh, you'll respond, will you?" Judge Halverson raised a hand. "Enough, Mr. Monroe's credentials are valid. If there are concerns, we'll address them through proper channels. But for now, he represents Mr. Brooks. We proceed." Alex nodded once and returned to his seat. Across the aisle, Lansing gave him a condescending smile. "This'll be quick." Alex didn't respond. He opened his satchel and pulled out several color-coded folders, each one thick with tabbed exhibits and handwritten annotations. The casual air was gone now. His hands moved with mechanical precision. He whispered briefly to Mr. Brooks, who blinked in disbelief at the sight of his lawyer being young enough to still need a school permission. Slip-dop. As proceedings resumed, the courtroom tried to wrap its collective head around what was happening. A teenage boy had walked in, declared himself a lawyer, and wasn't being escorted out by security. He was sitting at the defense table. He was prepared, calm, calculating, and no one could figure out why. Judge Halverson kept sneaking glances at the boy, trying to find the flaw, some crack in the mask, some sign that this was all smoke and mirrors. But the kid was solid, focused. His legal pad was filled with citations that most law school graduates struggled to memorize. And that look in his eyes, it wasn't arrogance. It was something deeper, pain maybe, or purpose. In Calvin Brooks, a poor mechanic accused of stealing a customer's vehicle and dismantling it for parts? He sat wide-eyed, gripping the table edge, as if still trying to believe that this was real. That a stranger, a boy, had stepped in when no one else would. The clerk read off the charges, the routine language echoing through the chamber like thunder. Alex listened in silence, never once flinching. Then, as the clerk finished and the judge gave the signal, the boy stood, adjusted his hoodie sleeves, and spoke his first real words as counsel. "Your Honor, I intend to prove my client's innocence, and more importantly, I intend to prove that the prosecution's case has been built on assumption, negligence, and incomplete evidence. I ask for your patience and your ear." He looked not at the judge, but directly at the jury box. "And I ask you all not to judge a book by its cover?" At that moment, something shifted in the room. Disbelief gave way to unease. The boy wasn't a novelty anymore. He was a threat. No one knew who Alex Monroe really was. Not yet, but they were about to. Grant Lansing had built his career on control, on crafting airtight arguments, on breaking down witnesses with precision, on commanding the courtroom with a voice that never trembled. But as he shuffled through his paperwork and glanced at the teenage boy sitting across the aisle, something strange began to crawl beneath his skin. The kid wasn't fidgeting, wasn't stammering, wasn't even sweating. He sat there like he belonged, calmly highlighting lines in a deposition transcript, while listening to the judge like he'd been doing this for years. The judge turned to Lansing. "You may begin with your opening." Lansing stood tall, casting a practiced look of solemnity toward the jury. "Ladies and gentlemen, this case is simple. The defendant, Calvin Brooks, was caught with parts matching a stolen vehicle in his possession. He had motive, access, and no verifiable alibi. This is not about circumstance, it's about truth, it's about accountability." He let the words settle before taking his seat. He didn't glance at Alex, he didn't need to. The kid would fumble his way through a desperate defense, probably quoting irrelevant laws he barely understood. Lansing had seen it before, young attorneys eager to impress, only to collapse under the weight of real stakes. But when Alex stood and walked slowly to the center of the courtroom, he didn't look like someone about to crumble. He looked composed, grounded, and then he began. "My client," he said, voice even and low, "has been accused not because the facts are conclusive, but because they're convenient. A man's entire life is being boiled down to one assumption: that proximity equals guilt, but proximity is not proof. Motive is not identity, and suspicion is not truth." He paused, just long enough to make the jury lean in. "The state will show you a box of parts, a timeline with missing hours, and a narrative that sounds tidy. But I will show you something far more important: reasonable doubt. The one thing that stands between a man's freedom and the machinery of assumption." He returned to his seat without flourish, no dramatics, no forced passion. Just facts delivered with quiet weight. Lansing's smirk had vanished. The first witness was the arresting officer. Lansing led him through a series of routine questions about where the car parts were found, what kind of search warrant had been obtained, and how Mr. Brooks responded during questioning. Then it was Alex's turn. He stood slowly, flipping to a page in his folder. "Officer Daniels, during your search of the premises, you stated you found a box of disassembled parts in the corner of Mr. Brooks's garage, correct?" "Yes. Was there any documentation connecting those parts to the stolen vehicle VIN numbers, registration tags?" "Well, no. But the parts matched the model." Alex raised a hand. "So, just to clarify, no serial number match was found and no forensic evidence tied those parts to the missing vehicle?" "Not directly, thank you." He turned. toward the jury, then back. And in your report you wrote that the search was executed at 10:03 a.m.? Can you confirm that? Yes, Alex pulled a grainy printed screenshot from his folder and handed it to the bailiff. It was passed to the judge and then the jury. This image was taken from a security camera inside the garage. It shows my client, Calvin Brooks, working under a car at 10:03 a.m., with no awareness of the officers outside. Lansing sat forward, brow creased. That footage was retrieved from a backup system the police did not seize during the arrest. My question, Officer Daniels, if the suspect was in the middle of a job and had no time to move or hide evidence, how do you explain the sudden appearance of those parts in plain sight? I can't say. No further questions. Whispers stirred in the gallery. Lansing flipped furiously through his binder, unsure whether to object or dig deeper. This wasn't a bluff. This was methodical, but it didn't stop there. Alex called the vehicle's registered owner next. A soft-spoken woman in her 60s. Her testimony was simple and devastating. I never filed a theft report, she said. I lent my car to my grandson. He got into some trouble and it got impounded. I thought it was gone, but I never accused Mr. Brooks of anything. Lansing stood. Then why did the system report it stolen? She shook her head. I don't know. All I know is I never called the police. Alex took it a step further. He introduced a text message printout from the woman's grandson, time-stamped days before the arrest. The message read, "Sorry for the mess. The car's at Brooks's. I couldn't pay him, but he said he'd hold it till I could." And with that, the state's case began to collapse. Lansing tried to recover. He brought in a forensic tech who claimed the parts appeared to be from the stolen car. But Alex shredded the reliability of the methods, pointing out that without verified serials or ownership history, any match was speculation. And then came the most unexpected moment of the trial. Judge Halverson had called a short recess. As people filed out, Lansing approached Alex at the defense table. "You're good," he said, voice low. "Too good." Alex glanced up but didn't smile. "You mean better than expected?" "No, I mean I've gone toe-to-toe with Ivy League legends and you're not just some prodigy, you're dangerous." "I'm not trying to be dangerous," Alex said quietly. "I'm trying to be right." Lansing hesitated. "Why this case?" Alex's fingers paused over his folder. His voice, when he spoke again, was softer. "Because no one else cared. Because it's always people like Mr. Brooks who get steamrolled by a system designed for speed, not justice." And then, perhaps for the first time in his career, Lansing had no rebuttal. When the court reconvened, Alex rested his case with simple words. "The burden of proof lies with the prosecution. Not emotion, not assumption, but proof. And if even one doubt lingers in your mind, then justice demands only one verdict." The courtroom held its breath as the jury left to deliberate. I was on Alex Monroe. The kid who walked in a mystery, now a force they couldn't explain. The jury deliberated for less than an hour. That alone spoke volumes. Alex sat quietly at the defense table, his hands clasped, his eyes locked straight ahead. He didn't fidget, didn't check his phone, didn't whisper to his client. He just waited like someone who had already made peace with every possible outcome. Calvin Brooks, however, wasn't so calm. He kept glancing at Alex, his hands shaking slightly as they gripped the wooden edge of the table. For a man who had spent the past few months with the weight of the system pressing down on him, the wait for 12 strangers to decide his fate was unbearable. When the jury re-entered, you could feel the shift. Something about the way they walked. The way they held their faces, not grim, not tense, just steady. The foreman handed a slip of paper to the bailiff, who then brought it to the judge. The courtroom went dead silent. Judge Halverson unfolded the paper slowly, read it, then looked over the rim of his glasses. "In the matter of the state of California versus Calvin Brooks," he began, voice firm but even on the charge of grand theft auto, we, the jury, find the defendant not guilty. A gasp erupted from the back row. Calvin Brooks let out a breath that sounded like it had been trapped in his chest for months. His head dropped into his hands, shoulders trembling. The man wept openly, not caring who saw. His sister rushed to his side from the gallery, tears streaming down her cheeks. The judge gavelled the court into order, but his eyes weren't on the defendant. They were on Alex. As the noise faded, Halverson leaned forward. Mr. Monroe approached the bench. There was a pause. Alex stood slowly and stepped forward. He didn't look cocky or triumphant. Just calm. The judge studied him, face unreadable. You walked into this courtroom 3 hours ago with no reputation, no firm behind you, no senior counsel to cover your back. The only thing you had was a file and a nameplate that didn't match your face. Alex said nothing. Halverson continued. What you did here today was not only legally sound, it was exceptional. Your cross-examinations were surgical. Your evidence was thorough. Your demeanor was professional, more professional than many seasoned attorneys I've seen in this courtroom. And above all, you stood for a man everyone had already given up on. Alex finally spoke, voice low. I stood where no one else would, Your Honor. The judge nodded slowly. You've made a believer out of a lot of skeptics today. Including me, he turned to the court reporter. Let the record reflect that Mr. Calvin Brooks has been acquitted of all charges and is free to go. This court is adjourned. The gavel cracked. As the courtroom emptied, reporters swarmed the hallway, their microphones ready like vultures around a fresh story. The teenage attorney who shocked. The court! Who is Alex Monroe? Is he even real? But Alex didn't step into the spotlight. He didn't give a statement. He waited until the crowd focused on Calvin, on the man who had been saved. Then he slipped quietly out the side door. Calvin caught him near the exit, still in disbelief. I don't know how to thank you, kid, he said, voice hoarse. You don't have to, Alex replied. But why me? Calvin asked. Why take my case? No one else would touch it, not even public defense. Alex paused for a long moment before answering. When I was 11, my father was wrongfully disbarred, framed by a judge with a grudge and a prosecution team that didn't care about the truth. No one fought for him. No one believed in him. They stripped away everything he was, and he couldn't survive it. Calvin's face fell. Your dad? He died 2 years later, Alex said quietly. Heart failure. That's what the coroner said. But I think it was something else, something slower. When they took his dignity, they took his will. Calvin swallowed hard, unsure what to say. So, Alex continued, I made a promise that day. I'd never let the system eat someone alive. Just because they didn't have the money or the reputation to fight back. Calvin nodded, a lump forming in his throat. He'd be proud of you. Alex managed a faint smile. I hope so. Outside the courthouse, camera flashes lit up like lightning. Alex pulled up his hoodie, ducked his head, and began walking. He passed by headlines plastered across tablet screens. Teen prodigy attorney defends first case and wins. Is this the future of law? And mystery teen outsmarts veteran prosecutor in stunning courtroom victory. He ignored them all. This wasn't about fame. It never had been. Every case he took, every file. He studied late into the night. Every statute he memorized. It was all for something greater. Something deeply personal. Justice wasn't a concept to him. It was a calling. The truth was, Alex Monroe wasn't supposed to be here. No one had planned for him. He hadn't followed the traditional route, hadn't attended a big-name law school, hadn't been groomed by powerful mentors. He had studied in libraries while his friends went to dances. He memorized civil procedure instead of birthday party dates. He taught himself not just the law, but how to survive in a world that didn't want him to succeed. And now, he was here. Changing it. One case at a time. Behind him, in that courthouse, a man who'd nearly lost everything now walked free. Ahead of him, a long road stretched forward, case files waiting, names needing a voice, injustices that hadn't yet reached the surface. Alex Monroe didn't walk it for glory. He walked it because someone had to.